Hello and welcome to Locked In FPL. We're back for game week 6. I'm pleased to have a special guest and good friend Brad Mayor FPL on X. I am, of course, FPL Nima. Today we're going to get to know Brad as he's otherwise really known. I remember you used to have the Mayor Quimby from Simpsons logo, but the rebrand looks far more handsome. If any of the video viewers who can see you here today with us, Brad. But yeah, good to have you on Locked In FPL and look forward to hearing about how you got into the game and maybe kind of your play style before we talk about game week 6. I always like to get to know the guests in a more casual, intimate manner. So yeah, welcome to the channel.
Yeah, thanks for having me, mate. Like you say, it's been a while. It's been, well, at least a couple of years since
I was going to say, it must be a couple of years, right?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
So because it was at the Thirsty Bear, was it? Was it like a...
It was...
I think, yeah, it was a lot. It was probably like one of the game week ones, maybe, when the season was about to begin, like 3 seasons ago now.
It was a fest. It was
yeah,
whenever there was a fest.
I think it might have even been the first ever fest or second ever fest.
Yeah,
it was
maybe
very early on.
Potentially, but yeah, it was a long time ago. Long overdue.
Long overdue. I'm glad to see you're killing it as well. Your preseason content, for anyone who doesn't know, Brad's been writing great content, not just in the preseason, but he's continued it into the season. Far more active and gives far more useful advice than I will. So I just show up here, as he knows, and kind of with little prep, just discuss thoughts on my mind. But thanks to him today, we're going to get some interesting conversations for the Wildcarders. I'm on Wildcard myself. I know you have some controversial views, but we'll get to those. Before that, let's talk more about your play style. I think that's a good place to start. So I've also kind of highlighted that when you did get a top 3K finish. So I'd like to know kind of if there was anything that season that's like a favorite memory, a double game week, a chip usage. But yeah, let's start there. Just hear more about how you got into the game, what you like most about it. And that season when you got the top 3K finish is pretty epic.
Yeah, so I mean, the story about how I got into FPL is probably very common, to be honest. It's more that had leagues with mates, had work leagues and what have you, played as a casual as such. And then there started a bit of money started getting involved in these leagues. And I was like, right, okay, let's actually lock in and kind of lock in and do a bit of research on this and actually like try a bit harder. So found myself on Twitter, saw various people on there, and yeah, decided to make a Twitter account and get involved a little bit. That ended up with, so we're talking about play style. 2 or 3 years ago, I got more into the kind of analytics side of it. I'm not kind of die-hard analytics, but the first person that actually got me into it was your other co-host, Simon. So I saw he used to post a captaincy thing. And it was just like a spreadsheet, no fancy graphic or anything. But it was like the top.
It had the numbers, yeah, for like 7 weeks ahead. And I never used to think like that. I never used to plan for that.
Yeah. So that was my first introduction into analytics. Given that, so I'm an accountant by trade. So numbers and analytics and data was always something that I'd have been up for getting involved in. So yeah, and that kind of coincided with this good season of mine, not last season, the season before. So I was much more involved in analytics at that point. That season, I was kind of heaviest into analytics, and that kind of led to the good finish, really. I don't know if you follow the kind of FPL review.
So I use the free model. So I'm like, but did you have like the match day ranking that year when you finished top 3K? I'm assuming it was in the like single digits.
Yeah, so my rankings on there were a joke. So I was like, I think I finished second for MD rank behind Spaceman. I had like 6th in XG rank, and yeah, my overall data rank was pretty good that year. So technically, I had negative variance and still finished 3K.
So did you get into the Elite 1000 as well, the FPL review one?
Yeah,
I assume naturally, yeah, because I've been begging Simon the secrets to that algorithm. How do you get in? What ranks do you need to get? How often? So your top 3K got you in, okay?
That season has got me in, and it kept me in after a average season last year as well. So there must be some sort of decent waiting for that season, because it kept me in all the good stuff for this season as well. But yeah, I was heavy following the kind of analytics models and stuff that year. last season wasn't quite as heavy and die hard with it. And this season, again, still very much analytics based, but not kind of die hard following it.
My favorite thing about this topic is so like FPL Rhinos, he's quite a maverick manager on X. If anyone's come across him, a Leeds fan, like always has great captaincies. But he recently tweeted something like that he'd found out he's actually an analytics manager once he saw that his process, the way he plays the game of FPL is similar to like other people who he would have thought he's different to, but they do it maybe through review and he just thinks in a different way or gives his own. And that's what's the beauty of analytics, I've realized. I think that's why I liked Simon and maybe all of us got on when we meet like you as well, right? So it's just, we like watching the game. But even if you just quantify something on the eye test, like I say, oh, you know, like this team concedes a lot of chances centrally or on this flank, and that player gets a lot of chances on that flank, and these are their heat maps. Like you're still with your eyes saying like, oh yeah, like if you're saying he, you know, makes a good entry into the final third and gets his crosses in more times than not, you might be saying he got 3 crosses in. That's still a number. So that is still a quantifiable thing. Yeah. So I just love, like, there is the quantifiable element. And I know some people, for them, right, it's the outcome. So it's just goals, assists, points. For other people, it's the underlying. And then there comes the like the poker element, which I think I love most about it. Everyone's going to ask you about that and like the cash leagues from back in the days you mentioned. So it's like you're playing against these other people. So like there's even worlds in which some people will not make moves for OR. They'll make moves to win their mini league. And it could just be for bragging rights. It could be for bigger game than that. But each to their own. And we know it's against the rules to do cash leagues. So don't send your money to random people online, guys. They can get you banned, them banned, and you probably will never see the money even if you win. So be careful what you do. We're not condoning the cash leagues. We know they're against FPL T's and C's, but that's where many people got in. And I must admit the same.
Yeah. And what you said is true. Like people won't realize it, but they are following, like you say, a lot of the same fundamental things that analytics managers are. So, for example, like you said, even if it's just as small as shots, if someone has 10 shots in a game, like which ultimately they're trying to predict the future, and to predict the future, you want to look at what somebody's done in the past and try and take the lucky parts out of it if you can. And the most lucky parts, I guess, are a goal and an assist. Whereas the bits that you can look at that are less lucky is how many shots they're going to have in a game, where they are position wise and things like that. So yeah, I think people, a lot of people kind of don't realize that they're thinking the same way a lot of times.
Tell us more about the top 3K year. So in terms of like a favorite memory, do you remember any like? I'm trying to think what season that was.
Like a couple of things. So the first one is that in that whole season, I was a big Solanke guy. So that was the season where Solanke wasn't popular at all. Can't imagine that now, but it was a time when Solanke wasn't popular. So it was not last season, the season before. And I bought Solanke in, and then pretty much every time I needed to play him, this is when he was cheap as well, so you'd bench him some weeks. Every time I needed to play him, he scored or got an assist or did something. It was just a ridiculous amount of luck. And you know, on live FPL, when you've got how much you've gained from that one player in that week, that was like he'd get 9 points and I'd gain like 8.96 off of it because nobody else had him.
Did you ever download you know, the end of the season, for anyone who's not done this in the chat as well, like they give you a limited time before FPL deletes everything and you can download your whole season right into the spreadsheet with the rows. So when you see how many points, like you were saying, you gain, but not on a weekly basis, for the whole season. I see so many players I was reluctant to buy, and they're like in the -60, -70, -80 against me, and they might be players I owned. So there'll be someone like Son or Lingard. All the times I didn't have him, he hurt me, and even the times I had him didn't do enough to get out the -80, -70.
Exactly.
And you Martinez, another one. So it sounds like you had that, but you were on the underlying differential part because people were not even buying, and every time you played him, it worked out. So it wasn't like one moment that got you there. It was just the sheer consistency of this low ownership pick every week, just farming in points for you. So on the overall spreadsheet, he must have been one of the biggest contributors.
Yeah. And I've still got the screenshots on my phone of and you can see the gradual change in it. So there's one where he got like 9 points and I got like a 8.96 gain. There's another one where he got like 12 and I got like a 10-point gain. You can see the ownership gradually changing throughout time as I've got all these different screenshots.
I love that.
But no,
so you've even got it over time. I love that.
he was brilliant for me that season, yeah. And on the opposite of that, this is last season now, the worst situation I had in FPL was there was a point last season, and this is actually Solanke based as well. So there was a point last season where there was a benching dilemma between Solanke and Palmer. And to me, it was just 50-50, completely level. And I thought to myself, okay, well, most people are going to play Palmer, so I can get a little bit of free risk here, get a little bit of a differential in. And that was one of the weeks where Palmer scored 17 points and Solanke.
I think that was the week I benched him.
Yeah.
Luton away.
Yeah. So
I was fuming.
Yeah. That was when I benched him as well. And yeah, that genuinely, that pretty much single-handedly ruined a chance of a very good finish for me last season, because I dropped
that one moment
so far.
You know what's funny? So last season, I had a look. It was my worst start, I'd say, in the first 10 weeks, yeah, compared to like the last 8 seasons. And the year before was my worst season in the 8 seasons. So then, like, I was like, this is going to get worse. It's going from worse to worse. And then somehow it ended up being like my 4th best finish. And it was okay. Like, it was what I target every year. I was happy that it was like top 100K is what I go for. But I always say by 10 weeks in, I try to assess if I'm in the top million from that point and I've got a 5-digit, then I'm like, anything's possible still. But if I'm like, I always look at from where I'm chasing, like, am I still targeting the top 100K I was aiming for pre-season, or now do I push and go? Because in my best year, right, this was the wildest stat I saw in that report that we're talking about that I downloaded, and we'll go to FPL after this. But I saw the craziest shit, I'm telling you. So my top 5 game week rank, one of them was game week 1, right? It was a top 5 game week rank for me in the whole season.
Okay.
But it was also the lowest OR I ever was that season. So like that was my best ever finish, right? And when I remember when I saw it, I was like, this is crazy. So you have a year like that where every single pick you made at the beginning goes so well. And then you're like, I was, okay, maybe you're aiming for top 100K, but in that 1 in 8 seasons where that happened for me, you just like keep trying to push. And I was trying to get the triple-digit rank. And that's what so it was a crazy season. And there was like crazy chips just coming out of nowhere, random double. It was the Burnley double game week season.
Where, that one, yeah.
And then the Chelsea one got dropped in 28. So loads of people wildcarded in 26, not knowing there was going to be a double in 28. And then I suddenly changed my chip strategy from like wildcard 34 to 28, got Reece James, got injured, -8 in game week 29, bench boost with Robbo and these guys now. And it's just like everything was going to plan. So that the season started well, the season chip strategy ended well. And since then, it's never been the same, Brad. So that's why I put that story out there. I think many people know the full story, but it was like my best finish ever. Everyone was great. And then since then, it's just been, I think it was 180K and then 62K, something like that.
Oh, that's not bad, yeah. But that's another, talking about game week 29, actually, that must have been the season before last as well, where I got that good rank. That game week 29 was the double game week, right? And that was where, so I wildcarded like game week 25 or something. And that was where everyone had Kane, and he was about to play Bournemouth, I think it was, in game week 29. He didn't have, or did he have a double? I can't remember what it was, but everybody was really scared to sell Kane because he had like these great fixtures. And I decided to sell him against kind of the odds. And Kane did nothing in that Bournemouth game, but Solanke destroyed Spurs in that game. So Solanke's just been a cult hero for me for a long time.
I think it was Solanke's performance in that one of these games that convinced me to play him instead of Palmer. And then he did fuck all, and then Palmer got 17. So the FPL is crazy. There's certain players, you have history with them, right? Good and bad. And then it later biases you whether you buy them or not.
For sure.
And
100%.
It's always how you know who's new to the community, when they're like talking about players we might consider trolls, right?
So many times recently I've had messages saying, "Oh, what's wrong with Luca Dean? Why is nobody?"
No one wants. They don't get it. They're like 4 seasons.
No.
Oh, I love it. We'll do a couple of shout outs actually before we go into the season so far for you and what you're thinking for game week 6 to get yourself locked in. We done well, 14 minutes. We still talked about FPL in that section. Maybe what I should add is a section where I actually either ask quick fire questions at the end that are non-FPL related, or at the beginning also do some non-FPL stuff. But we'll figure this out as we go. We won't edit it. It won't be polished. Just let us know in the chat what you'd like to see. Yeah, exactly. The logo was meant to be finalized, and I told them this was a placeholder. And now we're nearly at the second international break. I just
I
didn't
like
want
it.
to stop, in the preseason. And by the time I decided that I was going to go ahead and rebrand and continue the channel, it was too late to get stuff up. It was just like it was better to get content out and just consistently do a show every week. But so quick shout out to Taste of Chaos 182. Good to see you, buddy. FPL Maga Evening, FPL Sparta. Thanks for tuning in. Gareth Pashley, good to see you. Great guest, says FPL Maggot. So we've got some fans already.
Thank you,
Claire
mate.
FPL, good to see you. Gusiero, honk honk. Cool. So I've just got your team up on FPL team as well.
Yep.
And obviously, I think you're higher ranked than me. I had a good green arrow this week, 77 points, but I've wildcarded as well. So I know we're on different strategies. So it's interesting to compare because you're still higher ranked than me. You're at 1.2. I think I'm at 1.5 after the green arrow. But it's not many points, right? So I was saying to you before we went live on air, you're only 35 points from that top 100K I'm always thinking about. But we're only like 5 or 6 in out of the 10 weeks before I would think about it seriously. And then 10K is only 57 points. So it's like, it's all possible. So what are you thinking? Did you wildcard in Game Week 4 or like, or you're going to save it for longer or?
Yeah, so I'd always kind of penciled in Game Week 6 as a wildcard window, but I didn't really have many problems in my team. So I was kind of able to just roll transfers. Before this week, I've made one transfer, Nkunku to Rodgers. Apart from that, this is the team I started with. So I've got a bit lucky with some of the players I picked. Obviously, some of them I haven't, like Bruno, Eze. But I didn't go over Kwanzaa. I didn't go over Barco. I didn't have kind of too many problems to deal with. So, I've got 4 free transfers. And I basically took a decision last week to ignore Salah, which was quite a difficult one, really, because Salah was quite clearly the best captain last week before the game week started. So, decided to kind of roll a transfer rather than using 2 moves to get Salah in and wildcard this week. That's gone pretty well. I know I had a red arrow, but I was 1.1 million before this week. So the red arrow is tiny.
Yeah,
So
it's just grey. It doesn't.
I'd say it went pretty well, to be honest.
Yeah, it's always a good one. I think the Haaland captaincy in itself, the fact that it did better than Salah is like that's kind of got you through there.
I tweeted like before the week started saying I'd take a grey arrow on this week because I knew that everyone would have Salah, everyone would have other Liverpool players as well, probably. So and I had obviously Saka and Haaland against each other in that game. Turned out to go quite well. I got a bit lucky, really, but 4 free transfers. Although having said that, I've already used 3 of them. I went early.
Nice. So, and anyone interesting? Is Bruno still there? Is my first question as well.
Yes, Bruno Fernandes is still there. I still think Bruno's great. Which
I've almost been talked into getting him on the wildcard from Simon, and I'm like, oh, I missed the blanks. And what if I came in when no one wants him? Because I'm one of the ones who doesn't want him, right? But it would be instead of Diaz. So I know we're gonna have to get to that conversation too.
I'd have Bruno Fernandes on my wildcard as well. And this is a reason that I'm not wildcarding as well, because I looked at my team last week and thought, if I don't mess it up by getting Salah and someone else, then I can roll, have 4 free transfers, and my team won't be far off of what I would wildcard into. So I've used 3 free transfers. The transfers I've made are, I've got rid of Isak finally. He was a headache. So I've got rid of him. I've brought in Kai Havertz. I have sold Trent Alexander-Arnold, which is probably an unpopular one. And I've brought in Gabriel. And then I've sold Bergval and I've brought in Mbomo. So obviously the key kind of players on people's wildcards this week will be Triple Arsenal, which I've now got, and Mbomo, which I've now got.
The main guy. Because I was going to say, even if you wildcarded, I'm trying to think who I would sell from your team. Unless like João Pedro is injured, which I will keep him maybe if not. So it's kind of like Isak, João Pedro. And then I look at that and I'm like, okay, like your goalkeeper Henderson, like
he'd go.
Maybe your bench free. And I'm like, is that worth a wild card? Like your 3 bench players and 2 starters.
Yeah. There's small players that I'd change. So I'd definitely change Henderson. I wouldn't have him on wildcard. I would change some 4.5 million defenders for sure. But to be honest, I know that we are going to talk about this in a bit, but I'd probably steer more towards double Arsenal defence than Kai Havertz. But if I was to try and get that now, that would use an extra transfer, and I don't think it's an extra transfer worth better.
That's crazy, right? Because that's where my difference in thoughts is, because I've gone for Raya for the price rise on the wildcard when I activated. But like part of me wants the double attack as well, because I know the double defense makes the most sense. It's like the highest clean sheet odds of the week by a distance, and it all looks good. But I'm like, let me just try hedge against it, because I'm going to be going to the games. Like, I'm going to be home Leicester, home Southampton. I'm like, no, man. Like, I'm going to be home PSG as well, and I play UCL Fantasy too. So I'm like, this is my chance, like a once in a lifetime chance to in a week be a free home games, have the players from my team in them. And I'm like,
you don't want to be sitting there rooting for a clean sheet over a Havertz goal. You'd much rather be sat there rooting for a Havertz goal.
That's exactly what it is. And I think on that note, like, I can see long term, I definitely do think the defensive play is probably the right one. But I'm just, like just trying to do one thing on my wildcards, maybe a bit different to both wildcarders and people who won't wildcard. Because I feel like the people who already have Raya, a lot of them would have been the no Haaland teams from game week 1. So they've carried Salah till now, maybe, and then maybe they're going to get Saka this week and maybe use the money to get Haaland. I don't know, right? Like game week 7 onwards, maybe if not this week. So I want to almost like go against the game week 1 players who aren't wildcarding and do have Raya already, go against the people who are wildcarding and getting the double defense, and then just, so it's not just purely for enjoying and being there at stadium, of course. That's what I'm trying to say. There's more to it than that. Like, I do believe that there's good chances in these 3 games at least. And maybe I could then move him on to like Solanke if I want in game week 9, or Cunha is someone I really want to maybe think about, but I just don't want to go now because he's burnt me. I've had him before on wildcard, and like he's been injured in the week I finally need him, and then I have to sell him anyway. And then a few weeks after I sell him, he's always back and he starts getting returns again. So I've learned my lesson talking about like bitter memories with Cunha, that it's like Ait Nouri. I've owned him, and then he doesn't play in the like 3 games I want to use him, and they get clean sheets in all of them. And I'm just there sitting there twiddling my thumbs like, what is going on? Like the same thing that happened with Barco this season. It's like I'm a sucker for it. It's stupid, and all these guys. So I get a lot of injury prone players. Ex-Lively,
exactly. Yeah,
even that's a stat, Brad. Jesus, they've managed to try and take the Grass FC and turn it into stats as well.
Turn it into a number.
So yeah, I think your team looks pretty good to me. You've already used free transfers, as you say. I think in terms of like future chip strategy, is it just a plan to kind of keep the chip, and unless you like suddenly have a really bad situation and lots of players get injured, or is there a kind of week? Because Simon yesterday was talking about all these different ideas he had of like maybe you do like free hit 9 to carry your wild card even later, and like it's not an option, and he wouldn't need to decide pre-game week 8, but it would affect his game week 8 transfers. So it's kind of like, what do you do from there then? So because he's saying in the next few weeks, your team and the Wildcarders teams are all kind of going to be good unless people get injured. So we're probably just going to keep them for a few games. We've got the fixture runs and the players ready for them, or we're getting them. So like game week 8, 9, 10, that's when things will start changing again. Also have a few tougher games again. Like, people might consider triple captain Haaland in game week 9 against Southampton at home. So I just want to know if any of those are in your thoughts, or is it all very much just like there's no specific plan yet? It's just keep riding it out.
Yeah, there is other swings, like you say, like Arsenal's obviously next 3 are good, and then they turn a little bit. I mean, there's fixture swings everywhere, to be honest. I mean, game week 8 is a potential option, but I think quite a lot of things would have to go wrong in my team for that to...
That international break, right? If your players got cropped on that, then maybe you're like, okay, like Bruno's gone, Saka's gone. Like,
exactly. I'm also on holiday, so I don't really fancy spending my whole holiday wildcard prepping.
That's a great tip. That's why I stopped doing it in the late weeks, like game week 18, 19, 20. So I did it once, and the first year I did content, right? I did it, and it was like Boxing Day wildcard, and I wrote my first article on allaboutfpl.com at the time. And then Surya and the guys got in touch with me, were like, wow, like, this is crazy. Like, this video got like, this article, of your wildcard on Boxing Day, because I know one else was writing.
Exactly.
Got like 10K views, and they're like, do you want to write your game week review every week? So I did it for that second half of the season. I revealed my team, but it's just too much of a mission for me. So that's why I commend you for all that you write, because I know it's a lot of work, the editing, and then putting it into the threads and certain formats, the research that goes into it. It's like, it's a serious amount of work, and then people just try to simplify it all and be like, here's a photo of like who to buy, who to sell, who to avoid. And we said there's a place for all of that too, right? Like,
for
you've
sure.
got high polished videos. Some people just want to get in, get information, get out. But this is more of a podcast. We just want to laugh at each other's misfortune. I'm hoping that Bruno keeps missing the chances if I don't buy him, but obviously I got to make that decision soon. So what would you do in my situation then on a wild card? Say I've already done the wild card. I've only got a price changes team. So like I've not actually got a real team in place. I've not sold certain people. Like I'm waiting to see if they double rise or whatever it might be. Like I've got Jackson, I've got Calvert-Lewin. If I decide to keep either of them, I don't want to buy them for 0.1 million more. So it's kind of, I'm like, I've got Wood, but then I probably want, DCL, and like I'm not doing it, right? So I've currently got double Arsenal defense. That's my main point. And I am looking to maybe move that on. And then also there's the question of someone like a Palmer. I was hoping Foden would have been the solution, right? But I can't really go there yet.
No.
And I think it was Press I heard. It was a really good episode, the FPL Wire one about the wildcard. And I think he said like one of the problems is normally when you're doing these kind of chip strategies and wildcards, you want to like know where you're going to go with it. And we're in a situation where everything's changed. So, Brad, what in terms of, because what I want to think about is we've got some Q&As all that I'm starring, guys. We'll get to them at the end in the live chat as always. So put your questions in for Brad. But in terms of writing and those articles and how long the research takes and the people kind of simplifying it as podcasts that we were saying before, just going back to that real quick. What are your thoughts in terms of then helping people? Because I play FPL in a competitive way. And like I've always wanted to beat people. So I always felt like also like when I'm writing articles and I was doing that, I'm making it even harder, the game. And it's but everyone has more access, right? Even the casuals I know at work, like they have similar teams to everyone else, right?
Yeah. I mean, for me, well, what I found more recently is that quite a lot of my opinions on things, most people don't seem to agree with anyway. So it doesn't, a lot of people will just kind of ignore what I say, which works both ways. That's fine if they do. But yeah, I get what you mean in that you are kind of helping people. But I don't mind that really, to be honest. I mean, there's people are going to do, unless you're like a super casual who spends no time on their team, if you're on Twitter or spending any amount of time on an FPL team, then there's no chance that me, like a 5-line message from me is going to convince you to do something over what you want to do anyway.
It's only like the super casual, as you say.
Yeah. It's someone that's just going to like copy a team. Like, fair enough. You can't do anything.
And there's a lot of those teams out there.
Yeah, there is for sure. But like, if you're even the slightest bit engaged, then it will take more than just me saying something to go against what you think anyway. If that makes sense. So all I'll try and do is just, the best way to go about it is just provide research, provide opinions, provide numbers, provide whatever you want to provide, and then people can make decisions based off that.
That have conversations about it. I think that's why I always use lots of people's data. I think maybe there's a good time to just put this up as well. I'll timestamp this for the podcast viewers just quickly before I forget. So 28 minutes. So these are RobTFPL on X. He has the Gameweek6 projected goals and clean sheet odds, which are from the SpreadX data. And in here, he always shows kind of the goals each team is predicted to score and the clean sheet percentage. And then you can see here, like there's some big stuff going on. So you got like Arsenal goals 2.7, Liverpool 2.45, Man City 2.15, Bournemouth 2.1, Chelsea 2.05, even Man United 1.9, Villa 1.8, Tottenham 1.7, Brentford 1.7. So all those teams, they're looking good this week. They're all the favorites in their games. Everton Crystal Palace is kind of like tied. There is no, and same for Forest and Fulham. They're kind of just there, like could be 1-1 either way is what the score's predicted. But clean sheet wise as well, Arsenal 55% with a huge drop after that, 38% for Liverpool. And then again, another drop to 31% for all of Bournemouth, Villa and Man City. Chelsea only 28%. And I've been looking at Sanchez in goal as well as a right alternative. So not great to see that. The Forest one, Zayna, people are looking at 28% clean sheet odd this week. Everton, the Mikalenko, 23% odds. You know, I was looking around, it just all looks like a disaster outside the kind of the main big team. So I can see why Arsenal double defense also appeals, right? It's like, I'm not sure these cheap, defenders are going to quite get what we think over the next few games.
Yeah, I mean, a couple that stand out for me there is Bournemouth 2.1. Obviously, it's the fixture, but someone like Semenyo is just, if you need to be saving funds on on Wildcard, then Semenyo just seems great, given that he kind of seems to be the one that's taking all the shots, basically. He seems to be kind of completely involved in any attack that happens. Another one that surprises me a bit is Man City. I thought that would be quite considerably higher than 2.15. But I think, see, this is where eye test and grass comes into it. I've watched 3 Newcastle games this season. They've been putting up some of the worst football I've ever seen, like ever watched.
Like the games they won, right? Like even the one, like
even the ones
Shaw's goal was, deflected in, really. So in the grand scheme of things, some of these comebacks and stuff, like they've been on very slim margins.
They've been so bad, like, and it's almost gone a little bit under the radar because
I had treble. Trust me, that's why I'm wildcarding, man. You said you didn't have like Barco and Kwanzaa. I had Gordon, Isaac, and Hall, and Barco. Yeah. It's like I've had to like rip them all out my team. I think I even captained Isaac instead of Salah, obviously, game week 1. So the whole thing's been a nightmare.
And this is what, so I had that. I posted that tier list today on Twitter, and I had a Newcastle players tier right at the bottom because they're just not doing it. Like Isaac actually hasn't played bad. He just isn't getting any chances, isn't getting the ball. Gordon, in the game at the weekend, I was surprised that he wasn't taken off at half time. Every time he got the ball, he lost it. He was just walking around. Newcastle are so bad at the moment. And this is why I'm surprised.
It's a good time to get out of them, right? So I think I'm vindicated wildcarding with someone who had 3 of them plus Barco.
Yeah, definitely. And this is the reason that I'm surprised that Man City number isn't higher, to be honest. I'm surprised.
But that's where the numbers as well, right? So these are probably not based on the underlying numbers as much. Like they're influenced by them, but because the spread betting markets, it will be different to some models, like a more analytical model. And I think I just go straight for like the spread betting market, which is more like the sentiment, I guess, of people like me and you, right? So this is where you can get an edge, because now you see these odds and you think, oh, they're lower than they should be for City. Like I think maybe they should be the same as Arsenal's is, and maybe Haaland is. Because if I look at these and I think to myself, why wouldn't I captain Saka over Haaland? It seems like I'm only captaining Haaland for EO then, even if I say I'm not, because whereas in here, there is, like I must be captaining Haaland for EO, or Man City's numbers are better than what people predict. And it's not, maybe it's accounting too much for the loss of the likes of Rodri and KDB.
Yeah, there is that, I suppose. Yeah. But then this is where I see these and I think, okay, well, these Man City numbers should be higher. I've watched 3 Newcastle games and I think they're awful. But then if that was the case, I'd be able to make loads of money betting, which isn't.
And it's not sustainable.
So I don't know more than the markets do, just from watching a few games of football. But yeah, those numbers do surprise me a bit.
But I guess that's the beauty of it, right? Because there's so much variance in the outcomes. Like compared to other sports, from my understanding, when you look at other formats of other sports tournaments, it's a lot more data driven, and the models like run the whole thing because there's just a way to play and win in those games. Football, somehow, you're not getting the points for like the NFL stuff or like the certain movements. It's like it's very team based as well, and it's a game with very small, big moments. Like one goal can win a game, and considering the way you win the games with a goal, there aren't very many of them in the 90 minutes we're watching. So it's like each one is a huge consequential event. So it's like, and then there's like officiating shit around it, and like the semi-automated offside that was supposed to come. They said after the international break. I was confused why it wasn't there yet. Then I heard they meant after one of them, so they might mean November. I'm like,
anyone they choose.
Yeah, like they were so vague with winning. I'm like, how can you have partial season with semi-automated VAR? And we saw it in the tournament before, and then we didn't bring it to the Prem for some reason, even though it worked so well in the first tournament internationally. Now we're finally bringing it, but we're implementing it further away through the season. Like, so there could be games that have, hopefully there aren't any that have an impact where they would have been different if they were played at different points in the year of the same season. So yes, it's all very shocking, but separate to that random rant as we went on. But what are your thoughts on just on, because you talked about Man City and Newcastle, but what about Liverpool? Because I think let's talk about, I should even timestamp this because I know that this one's a controversial one. You said sometimes people don't agree with you. So I got Diaz for the price rise. Obviously, like I've sold Salah, so it's kind of like it's either Diaz or no one, I think, for me at this stage. And I don't like, my alternative is Bruno, right? So I kind of look at that and I'm like, oh, what do I think?
Yeah. So I'm obviously in a very small camp that would have Bruno over Diaz on Wildcard. And obviously, I've got Bruno over Diaz in my team. But that's, I mean, so looking at Diaz, he has quite obviously overperformed his data massively. His data's pretty good still. Like his XG numbers, everything's pretty good, but he's overperformed them massively. He scored 5 goals in 5 games. Like if he carries on at that rate, he's going to break the Premier League goal scoring record that Haaland broke.
And Bruno on the other hand is, I think, the second most underperformed player, like 3.8 or something.
Yeah.
XG. So it's kind of like you're looking at the swings between them, right?
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, that's partly due to like the strength of the players around them. Obviously, like if you're Diaz and you've got players like Salah around you, whereas if you're Bruno and you're playing a ball through to someone one-on-one, Salah's more likely to score than, I don't know, Rashford probably. So don't get me wrong, there is like other elements to it, of course, but someone like Diaz isn't going to overperform his numbers for a long time like that. But
and not with the minutes going down as well.
So that's the next point, really. For me, I think that his like rotation risk is being under thought about. Really, it's not until like game week 4 against Forest. I'm pretty sure that Slot came out and said that Gakpo was meant to play that game.
Yeah, after the international break, he was meant to. Right. He was going to start already back then.
It's like everyone's forgot about that. Like Diaz was about to get rested, but didn't. So, and we've only seen one Champions League fixture yet. So when we see more Champions League fixtures, I just think the rotation is going to be too much. I mean, don't get me wrong. For the next couple of games, I think Diaz starts. Like next weekend, he'll start. Well, this weekend, sorry, he'll start. I think he'll start next weekend as well. But after that, it just gets all a bit murky. And this is where I'm a kind of safe playstyle manager. I will always kind of take minutes, not necessarily for someone rubbish, but if there's a close call, I'll take minutes over an explosive player that might get benched. That's just my opinion on it. But yeah, for me, I probably wouldn't have any Liverpool attack on Wildcard. Just because I think
that's probably what the people were confused, arguing with you about. But
yeah, and there's different reasons for all of them. So I think we can all agree that you probably don't go for anyone but Diaz and Salah. But
I think Trent is one that you've obviously sold as well. So that's interesting for me because I've got him and I look at that team and I think if I was willing to sell him, that's the kind of thing that could get me like a Palmer instead of like a Diaz. And then I'd be like thinking in my brain, like, okay, this seems good. Like Palmer isn't registered for Europe. Like,
exactly.
He got subbed early last time, but that was because they were like well away with the game and like, protect your best player kind of thing, right?
I can't see that being a common theme at all. That was because Chelsea they'd already won that game in the 50th minute. So I can't see that being a common theme. But this is why I wouldn't have Salah as well, because I prefer Haaland, I prefer Saka, I prefer Palmer at this moment in time. Now, don't get me wrong, Salah potentially is the best captain this week. But after that, going forward, I prefer the other 3. And you can't have all 4 of them. So that's why I wouldn't have.
I think Salah with the Wolves away and the Mascara injury, like it just feels like for me, like, oh shit, like if only I could get this week out of him. But then I'm like, I'm perfectly happy with a Saka or Haaland captaincy.
If it was a free hit, like Salah would be on it for sure. Don't get me wrong.
Absolutely.
This week he's great, but it's just more. If you're picking a wildcard team, you can't pick it for 1 week, and that's the reason. Plus, if you go Salah, then you can't just change to another player that easily, because then you have to downgrade the rest of your team to be able to afford Salah. So it'll take a couple moves to switch it around, even if you did want to go with him to start with. But yeah, Trent
inspired me, by the way, just one thing. So if I go for the double attack for Arsenal that I want, so if I did like Raya to like Sanchez, right? I could then do Jackson to Havertz, and then I could do Diaz to Palmer. But all of this is basically funded ultimately by Trent to Lewis.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I'm like, oh, okay. So now you can make me think about it differently. All week, I've tried so many tinkers and we're on Wednesday, and I've never done one without a Trent to see like, what could I do there? I thought I'd have to have a 4.5 million striker with one of like my second forwards, but this is okay. This looks good, man. It's interesting. I'm getting, and this is a no Bruno draft. So again, if I can get to Palmer ahead of
Okay.
Bruno, would you at least condone that?
Yeah. No, I think if you've got, so this is what, again, going back to my tier thing, I put like if you've got funds to play with, then go Palmer. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Over Bruno, definitely.
But for me, it would be over Diaz or Bruno.
Yeah,
So it's that slot, but then also it's the sacrifice of Trent I got to think
yeah.
about.
And I
I
don't
guess
mind
like
that.
you
I don't
don't
mind
mind that.
that. I mean, there's Trent as if you watch the Liverpool game, you'll obviously think that Trent is great and he has been brilliant. But again, there is also some brilliant other premium-ish defenders. Like even if you go, so Guardiola, Gabriel, Saliba, if you wanted to double up, Porro, even like Rico Lewis is a genuine option. There's plenty of other good defenders. He's not the only one, is my thinking behind it. I do agree he's great, but I don't think with the short-term fixtures are good, but if you look more medium-term, I think there's potentially better options from mainly City, because their fixtures from game week 7 are
Yeah, I'm
brilliant.
looking at those City fixtures. So, do you think it's an idea to leave a third City slot open on the wildcard? Because right now, like Haaland and Lewis seem pretty much in for me, right? And Savio, if I like had news that in the 12:30 kickoff he was starting, part of me kind of thinks, well, I was willing to do Foden instead of Palmer. Why not Savio 3 million cheaper than Foden? Like,
Yeah.
why not? Like, but then I'm like, who am I gonna sell to get him? I think it would be like Smith Rowe.
Yeah, I don't mind that. I really like Savio. I think Savio is a really decent pick. We've seen that. I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying that he has started every game he's been available for this season.
Yeah, the only game I
So,
remember he didn't start was West Ham away, and he wasn't. Like, he didn't play any
yeah,
minutes. Yeah,
I don't. I think he is Pep's favourite option at right wing. I don't think he'll, in the way that they're playing now, where he wants these wingers really, really wide. I don't think he'll like Foden out there. I don't think he particularly likes Bernardo Silva out there. I think he wants a genuine winger out there. And we saw, I don't know who it was against actually, might have been West Ham. Doku was terrible on the right. So I don't think he'll try that again. So I think that Savio is, if he's available, I think he plays most games. I like him as a pick.
Wait, just a couple of quick shout outs as well as we go. We missed a few people. I think Alex Vola, I don't know if we say hi to you, buddy.
Oh, yeah.
Colin Boogler as well, saying hit that like button, guys. Plugging for that like 42 minutes in. Thank God I remembered. BW Splitter, howdy, finally catching one live. I think he's got us just like on in the car, Bluetooth. Enjoy your journey or commute, I guess, because it must be like middle of the day for you. Alpha FPL, all right. FPL Maggot, selling Trent, very brave. Yeah, well, I'm trying this draft. I'm 0.3 million short of a pretty spicy draft. I'm not going to lie. This is like the closest I've been to like happy with a wild card all week. I'm so glad you came on. This is what this show is about, really, Brad. Now you realize you've been coerced. Yeah, we've looked at your team on screen, but then I've secretly found out what you think about, because the players you're going to buy without a wild card are the players I should definitely have, so like the Mbuemos and stuff, right? And I guess in my mind, to see you as someone going against people who are wildcarding Trent in, I'm like, well, if he's selling him, I could be open to wildcarding him out and
Granted,
spreading
I'm not in that's definitely not a common thing that's happening. But yeah, I'm happy to go without Trent personally. For that's not forever either. Like I can get Trent back in. Like there'll be a point where I need to sell Havertz quite soon. So that could free up funds to just get Trent back in. It's not like I have to go without him for a while. And if you went with Havertz or even Palmer or someone like that, there's a very easy route back to Trent with 2 free transfers if you needed him or wanted him.
Yeah, I guess Palmer downgrade. And this is where the whole Savio thing comes in, right? Because if I didn't have Savio, if instead I had like Semenyo or someone, right, then I'd have a option from Palmer to Foden if it did become an option. So part of it's thinking like that, and I'm like, if I have Savio, I'm gonna then have to do the double move with Palmer and Savio. But maybe that's not so bad. Maybe if the reason I want Foden is because Savio isn't playing,
well,
and then therefore I want to make the double move with Palmer at that stage.
I don't know if you can. Yeah, I'm not sure. Foden obviously is one to think about, but I'm not sure if you should kind of leave something on the table now just because there's a chance that you're going to want him. There's also a chance you won't.
But there's also the whole Lewis thing, right? So like I've got Lewis, Guardiola would probably be better long term. But I just feel like I'm going to go with Lewis because he's
Yeah.
4.7. I've got the bench cover. So I just feel like it's a
Yeah.
punt I should take on Wildcard because I think people will buy him in a few weeks. If he is starting and getting points, people will buy him in that run. Like it just,
Yeah.
like, so my bet is like, okay, maybe I'll have to sell him, but I don't because I've got 2 bench players. Whereas
Yeah.
I wouldn't like buy him now on a free transfer potentially because in my mind, I'm like, what if it's a problem later?
Yeah, I
But
think
I'd rather have a problem to sell him, than wildcard and then realize I've got to use one of the next transfers to buy someone
yeah.
I could have had on the wildcard. So I think that's the way I'm looking at it. But
I think that on Wildcard, I think he's at his value. He is definitely worth the risk. If he was like 5.5 million, then maybe not. But he is definitely worth the risk. I think it's like you say, as long as you've got some, maybe even just one good bench option, like a 4.5 million defender on the bench, then I think he's worth the risk for sure.
so let's see a couple of comments in the chat as well. So Alpha FPL brag, I've had Raya, Gabriel, Saka since game week 1, wildcard intact, feeling good.
Very
I
nice.
think that does sound very nice. We've got Dejo asking Palmer captain. I have Saka, Haaland, and Palmer.
Yeah, I mean, I do this like captaincy model thing where on my YouTube channel where I've made a model basically myself, and it's not great, but it's something. And Palmer isn't far behind those other 3: the Salah, Haaland, Saka. I mean, I don't think this is the week to go against one of them 3 really, but I don't think he's that far behind them.
You know what? I think now that I've got this draft with Palmer in after downgrading Trent and not having to lose the front 3, in my brain, I'm like, shit. And then the more you're telling me about your model and I'm seeing 2.05 on the expected goals here, like, oh, this could be very interesting. I'm going to do a quick couple of thank yous from now so that we don't forget, because basically we're about 20 minutes away from the Arsenal kickoff. So I'm going to make sure I give thank yous to everyone first, and then we'll continue answering all the questions in the chat that are coming. And we'll talk a lot more about Arsenal in terms of maybe the best 3 on a wild card, and that will probably be a good conclusion with the Q&A. But a couple of shout outs to the master key holders first. So Greenback Golf, Gary Hallwood, David Harrison, Roberto Mangon Song. And somehow I got gifted one last week. So I said that this week I would have to gift one back because it accidentally went to me from Tiggy. So thank you for gifting the membership. Podner in our key holders, longest serving there. Kevin Rose, Blonde, FPL teacher, Tom Gorsuch, Lindsay O, Dom, Claire, FPL Turs, Catherine A, Harry Not Kane, Benjamin Lockwood, FPL Discomfort, Grady, Jasper and Singh, BW Splitter, the FPL Juice Show. Last but not least, our Patreons, Elron, FPL California, Mike Burke, Drop Alchemy, and Dr. Green Farm. Yeah, so thank you everyone who does support the show, as always. Please do subscribe if you're new to the channel to see it every Wednesday with a new guest, just going through casual chat like we're in a pub with friends, watching the games, talking about our team, getting locked in for the week. We'll put the stats back up for this week when we have our discussion as well about Arsenal. And I think we'll timestamp this section as like the start of the Q&A and the Arsenal part, because a lot of people had questions pre-show as well. So I'll kind of read out the Arsenal questions now from the Discord and from Twitter, and then we'll take the Q&A in the live chat as well. And Dejo, just before we move on, you can be the start of the Q&A. So Palmer captain with Saka, Haaland, Palmer. I can see you, like, if you want to do it, it seems viable enough. Like you said, though, Brad, I personally, with the options you have available, I think I would go for Haaland personally, but there's no reason not to.
I don't think he's a bad option, but I don't think this is the week to do it. I think that Arsenal, City, and Liverpool have too good of fixtures this week. There'll be weeks where they don't have fixtures as good as this, so I don't think this is the week to do it, personally.
It doesn't feel like the right week for that. So let me, I'm just putting the timestamps in basically so that people who asked all the Arsenal questions can come and not miss it as well. So we've got the first one is from Jasperin. So he said, I'm on a wild card this week. I wanted to get a sense of the Arsenal back line. Going forwards, do you see Calafiori and Timber starting regularly over Ben White, assuming centre-backs are nailed?
No.
So for Jaskins, I don't think so. No, there's no chance. I think those two will probably compete with each other as well. And White had an injury, and even when he played, they said, he hides his injuries and he'll go through a brick wall for you and stuff. So he's not even in the squad today, understandably. Neither is Timber. Calafiori did travel, they said, with the squad. So keep an eye out. There was some injuries. Supposedly, Raya himself is nursing a knock, so he's also not in the squad. think 16-year-old boy is about to start in goal. So it's all good here over at the Arsenal. We'll scout them tonight. And in terms of the defenders, I think for me, Gabriel's like I can't not have him. Like he scored the most goals. Obviously, I don't think there's any point talking about him, but he's got the most goals of any centre back in Europe in like 4 or 5 seasons since he arrived. So that alone is enough for me. And the Arsenal defense. So then it becomes a question of I also want Saka, obviously. So it's kind of like who would you get? So the reason I'm going to now combine your question, Jaskrian, with Connor's as well is because it's really just a question of double defense or double attack on Wildcard for Arsenal players, and which second defender or goalkeeper or which second attacker. So Connor's question was, I have Saka and Gabriel on Wildcard. I don't want Raya, who's the third best asset from Kai Havertz, Jesus, Martinelli, or Trossard, please. So for this section, these few minutes, we'll cover that question and then any Q&A in the live chat because those were like the pre-show questions. But yeah, get your questions in, guys, because we're at 50 minutes. We're going to get out of here in the next 10 minutes once it's been 1 hour for the game. But yeah, Brad, this is going to be the first time we're going to keep to the 1 hour. I've been trying to do this for so long.
I'd say on that, you can rule out Trossard for starters because he's suspended. And for me, you can rule out Martinelli as well, I think.
So Trossard is suspended, but I think it's just for tonight because it carries through to the cup. Yeah. But that makes it worse for me, like for someone like Jesus. Like I wouldn't pick him. Like I still think from those 4, my order right would be Kai. And then like I would still go Martinelli over Trossard and Jesus. And I think those 2 will battle it out for like that striker position potentially. So Martinelli, I think, will still start. Yeah. But there's also talks of like Marino almost being back, and suddenly like Odegaard might be back in a few weeks if all goes well. Like they're targeting the game week 8, the Saturday after the international break, like 19th of October and stuff. So I'm like, what?
Okay.
So that's a bit sooner than you would think. I was being told in the November and 3 months and shit. So I'm like, okay, like let's. But then the back line's also got these injuries that we don't know so much about. So I think on the wildcard, the biggest advantage is news. Yeah, so like, I wouldn't be going for any player yet. And like, it's like the whole Savio thing. I need to have a plan that if I did see he starts and I do get tempted, what will I do with the rest of the money once I, get him and downgrade someone else? So in that regard, I think for me, it's double attack. For you, it's double defense.
I do think double defense is probably better, although I don't think it's that much better. Like a lot of people seem to think. A lot of people don't really like Havertz as a pick because they think with Odegaard out, he's just going to be in midfield and it's going to be rubbish. Whereas we've kind of seen, granted, this against opponents where it's not going to be the same setup as Leicester and Southampton. But whenever Havertz does play in the midfield role, he's still pretty much just as high as a striker anyway, for the most part. He's very rarely actually like sitting in an 8 position or something like that. I mean, you'll probably know more than me. You watch a lot more Arsenal than I do, but Havertz does always kind of, especially when it's Havertz and Trossard, they're both high a lot of the time. It's not like it's Havertz really deep and Trossard just high up.
Yeah, no. So I think I agree. I think especially with Jesus or Trossard playing up top, I keep making this point every week. It's not the same as when Havertz played in midfield before and Odegaard was there to be the more attacking player. It's a whole different dynamic, and Eddie was the striker. Like Trossard and Jesus styles more interchangeable. And anyway, from what we've seen, even against the tougher teams, it's been like a front 2 really of like Trossard and Havertz, and it's like 2 strikers pushing up and down. So I think he's got all the opportunities to get the points, and I like to look at the long term with him rather than just the sample size of this season when like 20% of Arsenal's minutes have been down with 10 men and away against Villa, away against Spurs, away against City. Like I know the numbers anyway haven't been the greatest. Like I think they're like bottom 3 for possession and shit like that. But I choose to look at the Kai Havertz in the game since he was a striker, and like the Kai Havertz that took 20 Arsenal Premier League games to score his first goal. And then since then, in 2024 onwards, is like top 3, top 5 in Europe for goal contributions since. And I look at that one and I'm like, yeah, like we've got a couple home games now after this really tough week. Had some time to rejuvenate tonight, play a really kind of hopefully semi-strong side, but with youth. And then we go again. We go to the home crowd. We get the energy back. And it's like, so for me, as someone who's going to go to the game, I have to tell Connor, I'm going to get Saka and Havertz. Like, there's no chance I'm looking at Martinelli, Trossard, Jesus. Like, it just, there's no world in which I compare them to Havertz, especially if we're talking about X minutes.
Yeah, and in terms of a defense versus attack point as well, I think I saw something today, which was last season Arsenal against the promoted teams averaged like over 4 goals a game or something.
It's
So
crazy.
it might have just been, it might have been just at home, or it might have been all 6 games against promoted teams. Either way, they averaged over 4 goals a game. So if that continues, which is probably actually potentially better numbers to look at than the first 5 weeks because of the fixtures that Arsenal had and the situations where you're down to 10 men, things like that. It's not going to be the same situation as it's going to be in these next few games. So I think Arsenal are just going to score a bucket load of goals, and I'd be surprised if Havertz isn't involved.
Yeah, it just seems like it wouldn't make sense to me how he wouldn't be involved if there was going to be a lot of goals. Now, there might not be a lot of goals. So that's the other side of the opinion. If you're on Wildcard, the numbers haven't been the best. There's been some set piece goals as people keep complaining. They said they weren't sustainable last year, but from what I understood, the numbers actually implied it was underperformed the number of set piece goals they were expected to score. So it's got to the point now where, like, I feel like when I watch Arsenal, like when they get that set piece, especially if it's like a few minutes into a game, there's just some kind of mind game, like just rattles the opponent. Like it's like they just know that Arsenal feel like they could score from any one of these at any time. And the opponent knows that they could score from one of these at any time. And it's like it's just become like a whole fucking game. Like they've gone from last season, like Ben White being there holding the goalkeeper's gloves or whatever, being cute. And then they say the teams complained and they were like, we're going to scrutinize it more. Now they get the team's own players to block their goalkeeper. So if you watch it carefully after I've said that, just watch the next few games, you'll notice now the difference is they won't be the one in the way of the goalkeeper. They'll make sure he's just like distracted and there's like 5 of his players in his own way and they're all in the wrong place, and Gabriel's just doing whatever like Walker thought he was doing with him, like the little cute poke video, kept poking him, and then bang, he just got dusted. It's like so for me it's just I can see both sides of it. I think Arsenal are better than people realize because they've shown a different side to their game this season, that defensive side. And we look at that City game at the end of a long week away from home as well. I think people don't realize that the players will have taken a lot from that game. I think mentally that would be a big moment for them if they did go on to win anything this season. So overall, I'm excited, and I just think that clean sheet odds as well, like 55% is pretty disgusting. So definitely in terms of the double defense, it's great. But again, I wouldn't be messing around looking for Timber, Calafiori, like Ben White. Like I'd just be keeping it simple. Saliba Gabriel or Gabriel Raya. That's I just feel like with Arsenal, like you don't want to be getting like these Trossards, Jesus. Like don't think about those for now. Like just if you can't afford Saka and you're thinking about Martinelli just in case, don't do it. Like he just got an assist, but before that it was like 13 games, 15 games without a goal contribution.
Like 18 or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a lot of them. And so he looked great. He's looking a lot better, but you need to like wait and see bit by bit. So I'll just quickly say the Arsenal lineup before we go, actually, and then answer these last questions, because this will at least give people, the viewers, a bit more perspective of what we're doing on Wednesday night. So they got the 16-year-old in goal, Jack Porter. Back line of left back Miles Lewis, Skelly, Calafiori, Kiwior, Josh Nichols. Midfield of Jorginho and Declan Rice with Ethan Nwaneri. Up top, Jesus with Sterling and Saka either side.
Saka?
So because he only played half the game in the City game, right? So
that still surprises me though that he's actually starting in this game. But maybe again we see another 45 minutes. Who knows?
That's the thing. Yeah, you might see another 45 minutes. But it's just so for me, I look at that and I'm like, I just can't see like no matter what happens tonight, I can't see a world where like Sterling or Jesus are going to be starting ahead of Trossard and Saka and Martinelli. And Martinelli's like rested as well now. And I'm like, if he comes on as well and plays a half. So it's all just like, we've got to watch now, see how the game goes. Maybe Arsenal even get knocked out. You never know. So anything can happen. So we'll take these last questions in the chat and then we'll get out of here. So we've answered Dejo's question. Tiggy Taylor saying Bruno Fernandes, you know you want to. I need to forget Tiggy. I can't stand the rat. Yeah, I was going to call him that, but I thought better of it.
He is. I mean, he is, but also,
he is. But you still have him.
He is, but he's mine.
Neha, what do you think about the Raya situation? I think we just wait and see. Like, it would be pretty ominous if there's no goalkeeper in training photos on Friday. I'm sure there'll be questions about it in the presser if that's the case. I have him on the wild card right now for the price change that I caught, but he might become someone else. I've also been told Trent is not a sell Nima by Alf. So then that makes me more stressed about this new perfect draft I thought I found. I need to keep thinking about it. Is there a way to squeeze Trent back in? I think this is where having Havertz and Calvert-Lewin up top means that I can't fund Trent. So it's like if I went with a two-man up top or got rid of Havertz for a cheaper striker, like there are ways of doing it, but I prefer to put the money into attack than defense. And this feels like it's not been the case for many years. Big at the backs work very well recently.
Yeah.
So maybe this is just me being really hyper aggressive for no reason, but Havertz is also on the picture of the matchups as well. So it's almost destined to be. And that wasn't even me who put it there.
Yeah, that's Rob.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll take a few of these other questions. So yeah, I don't think it's a long-term injury. Now, in conclusion, Gusiero said Rodri injury could affect City big time.
Yeah, I mean, I do kind of agree, but I also think it could be quite nice for Lewis, to be honest. I think that obviously they're not in direct competition for places, but it wouldn't surprise me if it does help Lewis minutes-wise anyway. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it impacts their attack too much. A lot of people do think that that's the case, but I still think they'll be fine going forward. Defensively, yeah, maybe.
Agreed. Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why the Lewis pick kind of feels a bit more like the one I'm willing to do on the wild card with a good cover on the bench, because the Rodri injury just gives me that little bit more thought that this can help. Now, I know there's Stones, there's, other players available, so there are issues as always, but I've got to take that risk on the wild card. I have to. We'll go Combs' question before we get out of here. So is Semenyo that far ahead of Tavernier?
Yeah, that's kind of a difficult one. Tavernier's numbers are really good, but I think it's kind of mainly from one game. I think that Semenyo is the guy. Apart from one game, I think Semenyo's played a lot more minutes, which is quite a big factor. But also, he just seems to be the one that's on the end of things or creating things. I do think that he is better. I think if the price difference was more significant, then it would be a conversation. But the price difference,
not such a big difference, yeah. So I have Tavernier in a lot of draft leagues, and I've had him over years because he gets points for everything. I've seen people trying to send me loads of trade offers for like more established household names than Tavernier. But you're right, because one of the things that always frustrated me was there'll be times I get him on as like a cameo, or like he might get subbed early. But the underlying numbers of just everything he does, he's just very lively. He's just a good player. Like it's kind of like he's getting rewarded in these formats for being a good player. It's not just so much just attacking returns. So if he gets like 13 points, 15 points, and he ain't done fuck all. But in FPL, yeah, you're right. I think the one question I have about Semenyo before we get out is, I know for the first few games, I think he was playing more like as a striker, right? So that was maybe where a volume of these stats come from. And I think that's where the danger is as well, with these sample sizes, like 5 weeks, as you say, and then we're kind of comparing what someone's role was tactically for the first few weeks versus what it might be now going forwards. And again, so how do you account for these things is, I guess, my question on the way out, rather than about Bournemouth specifically, but how do you adjust for those kind of things where you think maybe what you've seen is different to what the data suggests, like the Man City stuff you saw right at the beginning of the episode?
Yeah, I will, unlike a lot of people, I'll probably trust the numbers more than myself, even if I have, I watched three whole Newcastle games. So I know they're terrible, but I will always think about it maybe more long-term, whereas like you say, 5 games is nothing really. A lot can change. A lot of random events can happen in 5 games as well.
By the time you wildcard, it's going to be an entirely different template. The question is, can we who wildcarded early keep up with you?
Well, you say that this is actually why I quite like wildcarding late. Like last year, I wildcarded in like Gameweek 17 or something. I like to have more information. I don't feel like I know everything there is to know yet,
That's fair. I've always wildcarded late like you. That's the crazy part. So this year, I don't know. I've been for price changes is what I would say.
Yeah.
I've focused so much on that. I never did that before.
But also with the rolling transfers, and I think the wildcard's worth less anyway. So I think an early wildcard.
That was the other flip side, right? So in my mind, I thought, wow, I can roll, and I've never been able to do this. And it's like, maybe it's not so bad if I get the wildcard wrong, because I still have some transfers with me.
You can make wholesale changes without a wildcard anyway. So it's not. An earlier wildcard is better this year than it has been previously, I believe.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'm usually a wildcard late go because I just don't feel like I've got enough information after 5-6 weeks personally.
Definitely. So I think I just want to thank you, Brad, for coming on. Tell all the viewers before they run off to this game. I can see them already saying bye to run off to watch Arsenal. But
Often, yeah.
a lot of gooners in the chat. But yeah, so obviously thank you for coming on. It's been really great to have you here. It's been a couple of years, as you say. Hopefully we'll see each other again soon. And we'll stay in touch, try to do something again. Maybe I can collaborate with you on something at some point again.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me, mate.
For anyone in the chat, by the way, the video and the podcast, they both have the direct link to Brad on X, so you can find him on. I think it's Brad Mayor FPL now. It's always Brad first, yeah. Brad Mayor FPL. So guys, go and message Brad. See his content. He's got some great content every week. Just thank you to everyone who tuned in. Thank you, Tommy. Good to see you. Woodstock Chris, great video, guys. BW Splitter, really enjoyed this today. Helped me in some making decisions. Great to see everyone. Thank you. We will see you next week, I believe. I should probably just double check this because I also know that if Arsenal have a Champions League game on a Wednesday, I'll have to reassess these things. But no, I think next week we might have another, hopefully, very good analytics manager like you. But I need to just confirm they can still make it. And yeah, tomorrow I should be on Elite FPL debut for me with the boys. So looking forward to that. And Colm says, yeah, great guest, Brad. So thanks, Brad. Everyone enjoy the game tonight. We'll see you next week. Peace.
Thanks for having me.
Hope you're locked in for game week 6, guys. And if you're not, tweet me on the deadline day and I'll see if I can help you out. But yeah, I normally wait for late news and let's just say I'll be online. So if you want to reach me, I'll be waiting for Lewis news, Savio news. I'll see you all there. Peace.